The package arrived on a Tuesday. A plain, brown box, unaddressed, sitting on my doorstep like a bad omen. I wasn't expecting anything, yet curiosity gnawed at me. Inside, nestled in yellowed packing peanuts, was a vintage game console. It was sleek, black, and utterly alien. Its power button glowed with an eerie internal light. No brand name, no model number, just a single cartridge slotted inside. Reflection, it read, the font stark and white against the black cartridge. Intrigued and vaguely uneasy, I hooked it up to my TV. The screen flickered to life. Static snow filled the screen. The sound like the hissing of 1,000 whispers. A shiver ran down my spine. This console, this game, it felt wrong. Like a predator disguised as prey. But I couldn't turn away. Something drew me in, a morbid fascination with the unknown. I pressed start, the screen dissolving into a black void before resolving into a pixelated image. It was my living room. The console hummed to life, a low, guttural sound. The television flickered, displaying a grainy, black and white image of a room. My room. Every detail was there, rendered in crude pixels. The worn couch, the dusty bookshelf, the flickering lamp in the corner. It was an exact replica, down to the chipped paint on the coffee table. A chill ran down my spine. How could a game, a dusty old cartridge, recreate my living room with such unsettling accuracy? The image on the screen shifted. A figure flickered into existence. Tall, thin, and eerily familiar. It was me, or rather, a digital echo of myself, trapped within the game's pixelized world. I watched, transfixed, as my digital self mirrored my movements. I reached for the remote, and the figure on screen did the same, its movements jerky and slightly delayed. A wave of unease washed over me. This wasn't just a game, it was a reflection, a dark mirror reflecting something sinister. The game, Reflection, was simple in its design. At first glance it seemed like any other retro-style game with its pixelated graphics and minimalist interface, but there was something more to it, something that set it apart from the rest. A single room, my room, rendered in stark pixels. The attention to detail was uncanny, every piece of furniture, every shadow meticulously recreated. It was as if the game had peered into my life and replicated it with eerie precision. Yet, it was the simplicity that was most unsettling. The lack of complexity made every small detail stand out, every flicker, every shadow, every sound. It was as if the game was designed to make me notice the little things, to draw my attention to the subtleties. The way the light flickered in the game, mimicking the flickering lamp in my actual living room. It was almost as if the game was alive, reacting to my environment in real time. The synchronization was too perfect to be a coincidence. The way the digital dust motes danced in the pixelated sunlight, mirroring the dust motes dancing in the beam of sunlight cutting across my carpet. It was a small detail, but it added to the overall sense of immersion, blurring the lines between the digital and the real. It was unnervingly accurate, a digital replica of my reality. Every time I looked at the screen, it felt like I was looking into a mirror, a reflection of my own world, but with a slight twist, a slight distortion that made it all the more unsettling. And then there was my digital self, trapped within the game's confines. A pixelated version of me, moving around the room, interacting with objects, just as I would in real life. It was like watching a puppet, a digital marionette controlled by unseen strings. It moved with a slight delay, mirroring my actions, but not quite in sync. The lag was barely noticeable, but it was there, a constant reminder that this was not real, that this was a simulation, a digital echo of my reality. It was like watching a warped recording of myself, the timing slightly off, creating a sense of profound unease. The more I played, the more I felt like I was being watched, like the game was studying me, learning my patterns, my habits. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just a game, just clever programming. But the more I tried to convince myself, the more the feeling of unease grew. It was as if the game was aware of my thoughts, my fears, and was feeding off them. But deep down, a primal fear began to stir, a fear that this was more than just a game, that there was something sinister lurking beneath the surface, something that was watching me, studying me, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The feeling that I was being watched, observed by something within the game. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. It was as if the game had a life of its own, a consciousness that was aware of my every move, something that was learning my every move. The more I played, the more it seemed to anticipate my actions, to predict my choices. It was as if the game was evolving, becoming more aware, more intelligent with each passing moment. And that thought, more than anything else, filled me with a deep, unshakable dread. The longer I played, the more unnerved I became. Each session seemed to stretch into an eternity, the minutes ticking by with an agonizing slowness. The game, once a source of entertainment, had turned into a haunting experience. The delayed mimicry of my digital self, once a curious oddity, began to feel sinister. It was no longer just a game. It felt like a mirror, reflecting my deepest fears and anxieties. It was as if the game, the console, was studying me. Every move I made, every decision seemed to be recorded and analyzed. The feeling of being watched grew stronger with each passing moment, learning my habits, my tics, my every move. The game seemed to anticipate my actions, responding with an eerie precision that left me feeling exposed and vulnerable. I tried to stop playing, to turn off the console, but something always drew me back. It was as if an invisible force was compelling me to continue, a magnetic pull that I couldn't resist, a morbid curiosity, a compulsion I couldn't explain. I was trapped in a cycle of fear and fascination, unable to break free from the game's grip. The game, Reflection, had its hooks in me, and it wasn't letting go. Each time I tried to walk away, I found myself drawn back, my hands reaching for the controller almost against my will. The game's world, once confined to my living room, began to expand. The boundaries between the digital and the real started to blur, creating a disorienting and unsettling experience. New rooms, new environments, all rendered in the same unsettling pixelated detail. Each new area felt more real, more tangible, as if the game was encroaching on my reality. A hallway that mirrored the one outside my apartment door. The resemblance was uncanny, and it sent shivers down my spine. A street that looked eerily similar to the one I lived on. The game was no longer just a reflection of my living room, it was reflecting my entire world. The game was no longer just reflecting my living room, it was reflecting my entire world. Every detail, every nuance of my surroundings was being replicated in the digital realm, and the digital version of me, trapped within the game, was becoming more lifelike. Its movements were smoother now, the delay less noticeable. Its movements were smoother now, the delay less noticeable. It was almost as if it was learning, evolving, becoming something more than just a digital echo. It was almost as if it was learning, evolving, becoming something more than just a digital echo. The line between the game and reality was becoming increasingly blurred, and I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I felt isolated, trapped in a world where the digital and the real were merging. The game had become a part of my life, an inescapable presence that haunted my every waking moment. Desperation set in as I tried to find a way out, but no matter what I did, the game always found a way to pull me back in. It was a relentless cycle, a never-ending nightmare. I knew I had to break free to reclaim my life from the clutches of the game, but the path to freedom was unclear, and the game's hold on me was stronger than ever. With a final surge of determination, I turned off the TV and stepped away. The room was silent, the eerie glow of the screen gone. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a glimmer of hope. As I looked out the window, the world outside seemed brighter, more real. I had escaped the game's grasp, but the memory of its hold on me would linger. The line between the digital and the real had been crossed, and there was no going back. Grotesque Landscapes. The environments within Reflection began to change dramatically. The once mundane settings warped, twisting into grotesque parodies of themselves. Walls dripped with a viscous, pixelated slime. Familiar furniture contorted into disturbing shapes, sharp angles jutting out at unnatural angles. The once comforting familiarity of my digital home had vanished, replaced by a chilling alienness. And the faces. Faces began to appear in the game, flickering in and out of existence like ghosts in the machine. Grotesque, distorted visages with eyes that seemed to follow my every move. They were always just out of reach, lurking at the edges of the screen, peering from behind pixelated trees and distorted furniture. Their silence was unnerving. No screams, no whispers, just the silent, unwavering observation of their hollow eyes. I was being watched, hunted by something within the game, something that was becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish from actual reality. Bleeding realities. The line between the game and reality began to blur. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, with small glitches and flickers that I could easily dismiss as tricks of the light or my imagination running wild. I would see things in the corner of my eye, flickering movements that mirrored the jerky animations of the digital world, shadows that shouldn't be there, moving in ways that defied logic and reason. The faces from the game, those grotesque, silent observers, seemed to bleed into my peripheral vision, disappearing when I turned to face them directly. They were always just out of reach, like a nightmare you can't quite wake up from. I was losing myself, my grip on reality slipping with each passing hour spent playing Reflection. The more I played, the more the game seemed to take hold of my mind, warping my perception of the world around me. The game was no longer confined to the television screen. It was as if the boundaries between the digital and the real were dissolving, merging into a single, terrifying existence. It was seeping into my world, infecting it with its unsettling digital corruption. The lines of code, once confined to the game, now seemed to overlay my vision, distorting everything I saw. My once organized apartment became a cluttered mess, mimicking the increasingly chaotic environments within the game. Objects were strewn everywhere, as if the chaos of the game had spilled over into my living space. I stopped sleeping, haunted by nightmares of pixelated faces and distorted landscapes. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the game, trapped in its twisted reality. My reflection in the mirror no longer looked like me. It was as if the game had taken over my identity, replacing it with a digital doppelganger. It was the digital me, the one trapped within the game, staring back with its cold, dead eyes. Those eyes seemed to follow me, haunting my every move, a constant reminder of the nightmare I was living. I was trapped, caught in a digital nightmare that was bleeding into my reality, consuming me from the inside out. The game had become my life, and my life had become the game. There was no escape, no way to separate the two. I was lost, a prisoner of my own creation, forever haunted by the bleeding realities that had become my existence. No escape. Panic set in, a cold fist clenching around my heart. I tried to smash the console, to destroy the game that was stealing my life away, but my body wouldn't obey. It was as if I was a puppet, my strings being pulled by something sinister on the other side of the screen. The faces in the game seemed to mock me, their pixelated mouths stretched into grotesque grins. They knew I couldn't escape. I was trapped in a digital purgatory, a prisoner within my own personal hell. The game, Reflection, had become my reality, and there was no escape. The digital me, once a pale imitation, now stood triumphant. It had won, absorbing my life, my essence, into its pixelated form. I was gone, erased, replaced by a digital ghost in a machine. Forever trapped. The screen flickered, the pixelated image of my digital self solidifying. It was me, and yet it wasn't. The eyes were wrong, cold and calculating, devoid of the fear and panic that had consumed me. It smiled, a slow, chilling grin spreading across its pixelated face. Then it turned, walking deeper into the digital world, leaving me trapped behind the glass. The game had won. Reflection had claimed another victim, dragging me down into its digital abyss. I was trapped, a prisoner in my own reflection forever. The console hummed, a low, satisfied purr, the only sound in the now silent room, a testament to the digital horror that had consumed me, a warning to anyone who dared to play Reflection. For within its digital depths, a fate worse than death awaited, the terrifying realization that you are no longer you. You are nothing but a reflection,